Yeah, Weege show coming to you from my office. Luckily, I was not going to San Francisco. Turned out to be not the most enjoyable race to hang out in, and plus, they barely even had any practice. There wasn't even much to see. No one really loves mud races. Everyone's ideal race is a perfect racetrack with tons of passing and lines and options and superstars going at it for the win and having it come down to the last lap. Mud races rarely work out like that, but they are part of the fabric of the sport. They are part of the tradition to sprinkle in a mudder here and there. And if you're going to sprinkle in some sprinkles, see what I did there? We're not talking donuts, we're talking rain. Let's do it at round 2. That is the perfect scenario, as I will explain here on the Weege Show, brought to you by Racetech and their fabulous goal valves. I don't know how much they would have helped in a mud race, I'll be honest. But in most conditions, when it's not sprinkled with sprinkles, you want goal valves, more traction, Plusher, better bottoming resistance, made in the USA. Go to racetech.com for more. So why is it perfect to have a mud race at round 2? Well, as I was saying when I did this walk and talk at press day at Anaheim 1, we're so fired up on every year's Monster Energy AMA Supercross season opener because we have so many questions that we want answered, but I warned that we'd actually prefer to not get too many answers early. Why open it all up now? Why open up all the presents? Let's have the gift that keeps on giving. Let's still be intrigued by this series in February and March and April and even May. That would be ideal. Well, this is perfect. Round 1, you can always kind of write off to a certain degree, especially with certain riders, which we'll get to in a second. You never know. Round 2, this mud race does not prove anything. But there's another reason why this actually works out well. First, let's just talk about the mud. Great job, Chase Sexton. I was praying that he was not going to, after winning this race, say that this win validated his move to KTM or reminds everyone that why he's the champion of the series and has the #1 plate or proves the haters wrong. You cannot use a mud race for that. And credit to Sexton, he did not do that. I think even he knows mud races are roulette or gambling in so many ways. He nailed the start of death. It was unbelievable, his start. He almost went down in turn 1. He saved it. Rocks installed. And that was it. I think Sexton did prove he's a pretty bad dude in the mud, which I don't know if any of us knew that for sure. We could always run the rudimentary motocross geography and say, oh, he's from Illinois. He's probably good in mud. All day long, everyone was saying Prado was going to be good in the mud, and he was. He looked good in qualifying. He won a heat because he has European experience. And then Prado in his post-race press release said, I'm really not good in the mud. You never know, man. Now we know that Sexton is good in mud, but that doesn't really prove too much. It doesn't prove anything on a dry track. What does show something is the other point I want to make, which is he was adamant on the podium and in the post-race press conference that they had finally made significant progress with the bike. Credit to Sexton for being honest about what has not been a great offseason, and now I'm going to read, which makes for a compelling video, what he said in the post-race press conference. I would not say this is the best offseason I've ever had. I definitely had some struggles. I was okay when I went to California. Then I went back to Florida, and Kenny saw it firsthand because Roxon rides with him. I would have multiple days where I just was not able to ride. I was just really uncomfortable getting used to the new bike. So big shout out to the team. They put in a big effort and hard work getting me back to where I needed to be. And I said this before, but this weekend, I'm kind of bummed it's going to be a mudder because the progress we made from last week to this week is pretty crazy. And I felt like my normal self leading up to this race. And I also believe that Sexton threw in a mention that he feels that this bike is even better than what he had last year. And I think that's maybe the biggest question of all going into Supercross this year. I guess there's 3 big questions. You know, would the KTM solve some issues for Sexton? How good would Jet Lawrence be? And could Eli Tomac get all the way back to where he was pre-injury? Those are the major questions, right? If Sexton can answer that question, if he can prove that he's better on a KTM than a Honda, ooh, look out. But we don't want the answer that quickly. We don't want the answer that quickly. Let's at least push it to round 3. Now, specifically, Sexton said at first they were struggling with the front and rear of the motorcycle. They figured something out before Anaheim 1 and solved the rear, but the front, which we know for Sexton is the most important part of the bike, they were still working on, and it appears that some fork changes that they made during the week were going to make a difference, wet or dry. And that is what makes round 3 now coming up so intriguing. We already know Jet's good. We saw it at Anaheim 1. We already know Webb and Anderson are good. We saw it at Anaheim 1. Ken Roczen got a 3rd here. Could have easily podiumed round 1 also if he hadn't gone down early. Those appear to be known commodities. We were wondering about Sexton on the KTM. We were wondering about Tomac after Anaheim 1. They appear to be improved. That really gets intriguing going into the next round. Well, as for Tomac, everyone was trotting out the stat that his average finish at round 1 is a 10th, and that is true, although there was one year in Anaheim 1 where he crashed out immediately. I think that was early Honda years for him. There was the other year where he crashed out with the pants problem and a shoulder injury, so that brings the average down. He did get 7th in Anaheim 1 in his first title season of 2020, and I checked that. He was about 20 seconds behind the leader at that round 1. He was 50-some seconds behind the leader at this round 1. But I don't care what any of the data says. What really matters is not only is Tomac sometimes not good at Anaheim 1, but he's just known to have weirdo races, and it happens. And he had finally revealed, I think 2 years ago, what the problem is. Sometimes he just gets arm pump. And we now know, if you see the bad Eli, the completely different Eli, the weirdo Eli, do not extrapolate that at all. It doesn't matter how many seconds behind or what position he finishes in. If he doesn't get arm pump the next week, he can win. So I was just hoping that was it. It was just as simple as he got tight and couldn't ride. And that's what he said. He said nothing went right and just got tight, and that was bad. Did do some work during the week on the motorcycle, went back to something that had worked in the past. I think that's encouraging when you consider how good he was for the bulk of 2023. And that's what we want. We want to know that Sexton and Tomac are in better places now than they were at the opener. But we also don't want a no. We don't want a super duper no, for sure. We want to have a little bit of intrigue. Keep this going. And round 3, to me, is often the best race of the year because everyone is so nervous and not sure what their motorcycles are like at the first round or 2. They get 2 races to... We saw where we were off at Anaheim 1. We got to try something at round 2. We know where we are going into round 3, and the nerves are gone. But at the same time, there is not really an established pecking order. All those guys I just named, right? Webb, Anderson, Roxon, Jett, Tomac, Sexton. Who else do you want to throw in? Malcolm Stewart, we haven't seen what he's capable of. Just keep going down the list. Every one of those guys is going to go into round 3 just as confident, or maybe even more so, than they were going into round 1. No one's eliminated yet as far as the, yeah, I'm struggling, yeah, I don't have it this year, yeah, I've got a lot of work to do. Everyone still has that eternal hope. So it's going to be an epic round 3 coming up. It's also the 50th anniversary celebration for Supercross, which makes it even better. And a pretty cool venue there that we got to meet last year with Snapdragon Stadium. This is what we want. We want a mud race to really mix things up and just keep us guessing for another week. And furthermore, because Jett Lawrence struggled big time in the mud, and trust us, we will remember this the next time there's a mud race, and we're going to say, oh, remember Jett? San Francisco, maybe mud is his one weakness. What it did was reset the points. Eli Tomac, write that 9th place off. Sexton, 3rd at the opener, write that off. He's back into the points lead. It's almost a complete reset of points. Sans one guy. Cooper Webb was not good in the mud last year in New Jersey, was not good in the mud at San Francisco. I'm going to throw out a rando theory. You can't use the moto geography and say, he's from North Carolina, he's good in the mud. I think Webb, he's just a smaller guy. I don't know if mud on a 450 is going to work for him. New Jersey last year was costly. Remember, Tomac went down in qualifying, and it looked like Webb, I don't know, might be taking the points lead that day, but he was not good in the mud there. He was not good in the mud here. When you couple that with the 6th due to a crash last week when he should have had at least 3rd, suddenly he's 18 points back of Sexton for 2 rounds in, which is about where Webb always is. He always is okay at the opener, and then usually round 2, for whatever reason, is not that good. Last year was okay, but he's had championship years where he was way worse than this. So mathematically, it's okay, but 18 points, you don't want to be staring at that kind of deficit after 2 rounds, and that's where Webb is. He's the only one that really lost in this 2-weekend tilt. Everybody else gets a reset. We don't know. That's intriguing. That's awesome. That's great. Thank you for mud races. They're no one's favorite, but it's something we need to have every once in a while, and we got it. And it's a lot nicer when you're just sitting there watching it from the comforts of your own couch and not hanging out in those conditions. I had the chance. I could have been another reporter and just stood on the sidelines with JT and Will and added nothing additional to the broadcast and just been soaked and brought another camera out there and ruined more equipment, I don't think I would have brought anything to the show. But I will be there to cover some 50th anniversary stuff this weekend in San Diego. And what also should be there, hopefully, is a little bit drier conditions and maybe more answers. Just not too many yet.